The diner went silent when the billionaire slammed his coffee cup on the table. Hot liquid splashed across the counter, and onto the young waitress standing in front of him. "Can't you do anything right?" he barked, brushing off his designer suit. The woman froze, her lips trembling, her eyes wide. The room watched in uncomfortable silence as he smirked, threw $100 bill on the table, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "That's probably more than you make in a week. You're welcome." She whispered a shaky sorry, clutching the napkin in her hand, but what no one in that diner knew was that this waitress would soon hold his entire empire in her hands. Her name was Laura. 26 years old, a single mother, working double shifts at Millstone Diner just to keep the lights on. Her son, Noah, was 5, born with a heart condition that required surgery she couldn't afford. Every dollar mattered. Every insult, she swallowed, because quitting wasn't an option. But this one stung deeper. The way everyone stared, the way the man's laughter filled the air like poison, it cut straight through her pride. Still, she forced a smile, cleaned the mess, and whispered, "God, give me strength," before walking back to the kitchen. The man's name was Richard Vail, owner of Vail Industries, one of the biggest tech companies in the state. He came to that diner often, using it as his humility exercise, a place to remind himself, ironically, how ordinary people lived. That morning, he was entertaining investors, showing off his charm, his power. And humiliating the waitress became part of the show. One of his guests laughed, "You should fire her for ruining your coffee." Richard smirked. "She's lucky I don't buy this place and replace everyone in it." The laughter echoed through the diner. Laura's manager stood by the counter, pretending not to hear. No one said a word. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she bit her lip and kept working, because bills don't care about dignity. When the rush ended, Laura sat outside on the curb, her apron stained, her spirit heavy. She stared at the crumpled $100 bill in her hand, and it felt like a slap more than a gift. She thought about her son, about how she'd tell him tomorrow that maybe they couldn't buy his favorite cereal this week. And in that moment, she promised herself something quietly, through tears. One day, I'll make sure no one ever treats me like this again. She didn't know how. But something inside her had shifted. A few minutes later, a man in his late 40s approached. He'd been sitting in the back of the diner during the whole scene, quiet, watching. He wore simple clothes, but his eyes carried wisdom and empathy. "I saw what happened," he said gently. Laura tried to brush it off. "It's fine. I'm used to it." He shook his head. "Don't ever say that. No one should get used to being humiliated." He handed her a small business card. "Come to this address tomorrow. 10 a.m. sharp." She frowned. "Why?" "Because I think you deserve a better story than this one," he replied, then walked away. Laura almost didn't go. She thought it was a joke. But desperation can make you brave. The next morning, she arrived at a tall glass building downtown. A guard at the door said, "You must be Ms. Laura. They're expecting you." She whispered, confused. The elevator opened on the top floor. And there, standing beside the man from the diner, was Richard Vail himself. Only this time, the arrogance on his face was gone. "Ms. Laura," said the older man, "allow me to introduce myself. I'm Samuel Grant, chairman of the Vail Foundation. Yesterday, we were evaluating candidates for our new community initiative." Laura blinked. "Candidates? But I'm just—" "No," Samuel interrupted. "You're not just anyone. You're a woman who handled cruelty with grace. And we believe that kind of strength belongs in leadership." He turned to Richard, who now looked pale. "Richard here has something to say." The billionaire cleared his throat, eyes down. "I owe you an apology," he muttered. Then, to her shock, he added, "And a job offer. Executive assistant at the Vail Foundation. Full benefits. Starting today." Laura stood frozen. Was this real? Tears blurred her vision. All she could whisper was, "Why me?" Samuel smiled. "Because kindness deserves recognition. And because the world needs more people like you in places that can change things." Richard, red-faced, extended his hand. For a moment, Laura hesitated, then took it, not for his sake, but for her own. "I forgive you," she said quietly. "But never forget what it feels like to be on the other side of your power." For once, the billionaire had no words. Months passed. Laura thrived in her new role, helping fund programs for single mothers, waitresses, and people who'd been silenced too long. And one day, as she left work, she saw Richard standing outside, helping serve food at a local shelter. He caught her eye and smiled. She nodded. No words needed. Sometimes, people change. Sometimes, pain becomes purpose. If this story moved you, share it with someone who's ever been underestimated. Because the world needs more reminders that power means nothing without compassion, and that the way you treat the lowest person in the room reveals everything about who you really are.